Blackfeather's Vengeance, the deadly betrayal ride through Broken Bow, Nebraska. The town of Broken Bow, Nebraska, was a place where time seemed to move slowly. The streets were quiet, lined with small shops and old brick buildings. The air smelled faintly of fresh earth and livestock, and the sound of wind moving through the cornfields was almost constant. Everyone in town knew everyone else, and most days were peaceful, almost predictable. It was a town where neighbors greeted each other by name, and doors were often left unlocked. Life here was simple, but it had its own rhythm and charm. Among the residents of Broken Bow, Samuel Kane was known by his nickname, Blackfeather. It wasn't a name he had chosen for himself. It had followed him from years of being different. Blackfeather was tall and lean, with dark eyes that seemed to notice everything. His hair, black and slightly wild, gave him an appearance that made people pay attention without even knowing why. He had a quiet presence. He didn't speak much unless he had something important to say. People in Broken Bow respected him because he was honest, capable, and fiercely loyal to those he cared about. Blackfeather owned a small motorcycle repair shop on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it had a reputation for quality work. People came from nearby towns just to have their bikes fixed by him. He spent his days covered in grease and oil, listening to the hum of engines and the occasional music playing from a worn-out radio in the corner. For him, the smell of oil and rubber was comforting. It reminded him of a life he had chosen for himself, far from trouble, far from lies. Despite his calm exterior, Blackfeather had a past he never spoke about. It was a past that had taught him caution and patience, and perhaps a small part of the world feared him without knowing why. Broken Bow was a place where he could finally breathe without the weight of old enemies, and he liked it that way. He enjoyed the small routines of the town, fixing bikes, talking to customers, visiting the diner, and riding his Harley down the empty highways when the night was quiet. Those rides gave him time to think, to remember, and sometimes to feel free. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the wide Nebraska horizon, Blackfeather walked into the town diner. The diner was warm and familiar, the smell of fresh coffee and fried food filling the air. Regulars sat at the counter, chatting softly, while a small bell rang occasionally as someone entered through the door. Blackfeather liked coming here. It was a place to catch news of the town without needing to ask too many questions. He slid onto a stool near the counter and nodded to the waitress, Mary, who had known him for years. "Evening, Sam," she said with a smile. "Coffee?" "Yeah, thanks," he replied. He settled in, letting his eyes wander across the room. People were talking quietly, laughing at small jokes, and sipping coffee. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. But Blackfeather had learned to notice the small things that seemed off. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, the truth revealed itself. That evening, while sipping his coffee, Blackfeather overheard a conversation at the next table. Two men he didn't recognize were talking in low voices, leaning close as if someone might be listening. They mentioned names of families in the town and something about plans and land deals. The words didn't make sense at first, but as he listened more carefully, the picture became clearer. Someone was trying to take land from local families, land that had been in the town for generations. What surprised Blackfeather even more was that one of the names mentioned was Tommy Larson. Tommy had been his friend for years. They had grown up together in Broken Bow, shared childhood memories, and trusted each other through difficult times. Seeing his name in the conversation made Blackfeather's stomach tighten. He didn't want to believe it, but the words were there. Tommy was involved with people who planned to cheat the town and take advantage of families who had worked hard for generations. Blackfeather's mind raced. He tried to remember the last time he had seen Tommy acting suspiciously. Nothing had seemed out of place before. He recalled the nights they had spent talking about dreams and futures, the long rides on their motorcycles across empty fields, the small moments of loyalty that had meant everything. And now, here was a betrayal so deep it cut through everything he thought he knew. He finished his coffee slowly, keeping his expression neutral. He didn't want to show anger or fear to the people around him. Blackfeather had learned that reactions could give away too much. Instead, he made a decision. He would not rush. He would not confront anyone blindly. He would gather information first, understand the full scope of the situation, and then act. His past had taught him that patience was a weapon just as sharp as any blade. After leaving the diner, Blackfeather walked through the quiet streets of Broken Bow. The evening air was cool against his skin, and the sky above was painted with soft shades of pink and orange. The town looked the same as always, peaceful, safe, and unaware of the danger creeping toward it. But Blackfeather knew better now. Something had changed. The calm he had enjoyed for years was about to be disrupted, and it would be his responsibility to protect the people he cared about. He returned to his motorcycle shop and started working on his bike. The rhythmic clanging of tools, the scent of oil, and the hum of the engine became a meditation. As he worked, he thought about the families whose land was at risk, about the people who trusted him and didn't even know that danger was near. He had always believed in action over words, in protecting those who could not protect themselves. This situation would be no different. Blackfeather stayed late into the night, planning quietly, thinking through every possibility. He made a mental map of the town, the people involved, and the paths he might need to take. He knew he would have to ride, to move quickly if he wanted to warn people in time. But first, he needed clarity. He needed to understand the depth of the betrayal before making any move that could put him, or the town, in danger. As midnight approached, Blackfeather stepped outside, looking up at the clear Nebraska sky. Stars dotted the darkness, and the wind whispered through the fields. The town slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that was gathering. Blackfeather felt a mix of sadness and resolve. He wished Tommy could be the friend he once was, but the truth could not be ignored. He climbed onto his Harley, feeling the familiar weight of the leather seat beneath him, the cool metal under his hands. The engine roared to life, breaking the stillness of the night. For a long moment, he just sat there, listening to the sound echo across the fields. This was a town worth protecting. These were people worth fighting for. And if betrayal had entered their midst, Blackfeather would face it head-on. The ride that would soon define everything had not yet begun, but the first steps were already in motion. Blackfeather would watch, he would learn, and when the time came, he would act. Broken Bow might look peaceful, but Blackfeather knew that beneath the surface, life could change in an instant. And he would be ready. For now, the night was quiet. The town slept, but Blackfeather stayed alert, a shadow of determination in the stillness, knowing that the calm of Broken Bow would not last much longer. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over Broken Bow, painting the fields in soft gold and casting long shadows across the town. The streets were quiet, with only a few farmers driving their tractors along the dirt roads. Blackfeather was already awake, moving with a calm precision he had learned over years of discipline. He brewed himself a cup of strong coffee and sat by the window of his motorcycle shop, watching the town slowly come to life. Everything seemed normal, almost peaceful, but Blackfeather knew better. He could still feel the weight of the words he had overheard in the diner. Tommy's name, linked to outsiders and secret deals, refused to leave his mind. He knew he needed to act carefully. Trust, once broken, could cause chaos if exposed too quickly. He decided to begin quietly, observing and listening. Blackfeather didn't rush into confrontations. He studied people, read their behavior, and looked for patterns. He spent the morning talking with his regular customers, quietly asking indirect questions about land sales and new business in town. Most people hadn't noticed anything unusual, but a few mentioned strangers visiting local farms talking about investments and big opportunities. Those were the same strangers from the diner. Blackfeather felt a chill. It confirmed what he feared. Something was happening in Broken Bow. Something that could hurt families who had lived there for generations. He clenched his hands briefly, taking a slow breath to steady himself. He knew he couldn't act alone. He needed information, allies, and a careful plan. He decided the first step would be to confront the situation privately, without alarming anyone yet. After closing his shop for lunch, Blackfeather rode his Harley slowly through the town, scanning every street, every familiar face. His eyes were sharp, noticing small details others might miss. A new mailbox at a farm, a car parked in front of a house that usually had none, or a person standing too long near a fence, watching. Each small observation helped him piece together the puzzle. He had learned that patience revealed the truth faster than anger ever could. By late afternoon, he decided to pay a quiet visit to one of the families he suspected might be targeted. The Johnsons had lived on the same farm for 3 generations, tending their fields and raising livestock with care. Their children often helped after school, and the farm was a cornerstone of the community. Blackfeather approached the farmhouse carefully, greeting Mr. Johnson with a nod.
"Morning, Sam," Mr. Johnson said, wiping sweat from his brow.
"Everything all right?" "Yes, just checking in," Blackfeather replied. "Heard some strangers have been asking questions about farms in this area." Johnson's expression shifted slightly, worry flickering across his face. "Yeah, a few people came around this week. Said they wanted to invest. I didn't trust them. Seemed too smooth, you know. You did the right thing. Keep an eye out, but don't worry. I'll help if anything comes up." The Johnsons relaxed slightly, reassured by Blackfeather's presence. That was part of what made him different. He acted with calm authority, giving people confidence without creating panic. As he rode away, he thought about the others. There were more families like the Johnsons, and he needed to make sure each of them was safe. Back at the shop, Blackfeather opened a notebook he had kept for years. It was filled with sketches of Broken Bow's streets, farms, and landmarks, with notes about people he trusted and areas where he could act quickly if needed. He added the new observations, which families had been approached, the descriptions of the strangers, and the times of day they appeared. For Blackfeather, organizing information was just as important as physical preparation. The notebook became a map of strategy, a plan of action that would help him protect the town without causing unnecessary fear. That evening he met with Tommy, but not at the usual friendly hangout they had frequented in the past. Blackfeather needed to gauge Tommy's intentions without giving away his own awareness. He found Tommy near the edge of town, leaning against his truck, speaking quietly with one of the strangers. Blackfeather stayed hidden for a moment, listening. Tommy's words were cautious but carried excitement. The plan was moving forward, and he was fully involved. Blackfeather felt a mixture of disappointment and determination. He had hoped that his friend could be reasoned with, that loyalty would still matter, but this was a test of character, and Blackfeather knew what he had to do. He wouldn't confront Tommy in anger or shame. Instead, he would gather proof, protect the people at risk, and then give Tommy a chance to make the right choice. Revenge would come later if necessary, but for now, strategy was key. He returned to the shop and spent the night planning his next moves. He made lists, calculated routes, and thought about the timing of each step. He also considered the reactions of the townspeople. If he acted too openly, it could cause panic. If he acted too late, families might lose their land. He had to balance urgency with care. This was not just about exposing a betrayal. It was about saving lives, livelihoods, and the trust that held Broken Bow together. While Blackfeather worked, memories of the past crept into his mind. He remembered how he and Tommy had grown up together, riding bikes through the empty fields, dreaming about adventure and freedom. They had promised each other loyalty, a bond that now seemed fragile. That bond made the betrayal sting even more deeply, but it also gave him insight into Tommy's character. People like Tommy could change if shown the right path, or they could face consequences. Blackfeather would ensure the choice was clear. The hours passed, and Broken Bow slowly became quiet again. The town slept under the soft glow of the moon, unaware of the careful watch Blackfeather kept over them. He climbed onto his Harley once more, riding the empty roads to clear his mind and test the terrain. He traced the routes he might need to take if the situation escalated, noting the best paths to move quickly without drawing attention. Each mile reminded him of the responsibility he carried and the importance of his role. By the early morning, Blackfeather returned to the shop, tired but focused. He had a plan forming, a path to follow, and a sense of purpose stronger than ever. The betrayal was real. The danger was real, but so was the possibility of protecting his town. He knew the next days would be critical. Decisions would have to be made, actions taken, and people confronted. But for now, he allowed himself a brief moment of calm, sipping his coffee as the sun rose once again over Broken Bow, signaling the start of a new day and the beginning of a journey that would test loyalty, courage, and trust. Blackfeather looked out the window, eyes scanning the familiar streets. Somewhere in the town, Tommy and the strangers were planning, unaware that their steps were being watched. Somewhere in the fields, families were tending their farms, trusting that life would continue as it always had. And somewhere inside Blackfeather, determination burned brighter than ever. He had chosen to protect Broken Bow, no matter what it would cost. The quiet town of Broken Bow seemed peaceful on the surface, but Blackfeather knew better. Beneath the calm, a storm was building. He had discovered the betrayal, understood the danger, and prepared himself for what would come. The next steps would define everything: loyalties, friendships, and the future of the town. And Blackfeather was ready to face it all, with patience, courage, and unwavering focus. The ride through Broken Bow was just beginning, and Blackfeather knew that by the time the sun set, nothing would be the same again. The morning air was crisp as Blackfeather pushed open the doors of his motorcycle shop. The sun had just begun to rise over Broken Bow, casting long, soft shadows across the streets. The town seemed calm, almost ordinary. But Blackfeather knew better. Beneath the quiet surface, danger had started to stir. Today would not be like any other day. Today he would begin the ride that could change everything. He walked toward his Harley, parked neatly beside the shop. The bike had been with him for years, a trusted companion on long rides through Nebraska's open roads. He ran his hands along the leather seat and the polished metal, checking each detail carefully. The engine needed to roar perfectly. The ride could not allow for mistakes. This was not a casual journey. It was a mission. Before leaving, he made a quick stop inside the shop. He packed a small bag with essentials, a map of the town and surrounding area, a notebook filled with observations and notes, and a few tools in case the bike needed adjustments along the way. He also placed a few envelopes containing information for the families who might be at risk, simple warnings to help them prepare. Blackfeather believed in protection through preparation, not panic. The first stretch of road led him through the center of town. Shops were opening, and a few townspeople waved as they recognized him. Blackfeather nodded quietly in return. He did not need conversation now. Focus was more important than greetings. His eyes scanned everything: the cars, the farm trucks, the distant hills where strangers might appear. Each detail mattered. Riding out of town, the open highway stretched before him like a ribbon of possibility. The wind whipped against his face, and the engine thrummed beneath him, a steady companion. Blackfeather allowed himself a moment to breathe in the freedom of the ride. Yet, freedom was mixed with urgency. He had to reach the families first, to ensure they were aware of the danger, and he had to do it without alerting the outsiders to his movements. His first stop was the Johnson farm. A house came into view after a few miles, surrounded by golden fields and a line of tall trees. Blackfeather slowed his bike, pulling it to a stop near the barn. He approached quietly, making sure the family was not alarmed by his sudden appearance. Mr. Johnson was working in the field, and the children were nearby, helping with chores. "Morning, Sam," Mr. Johnson said, pausing to wipe sweat from his forehead. "You're out early." "I needed to make sure everything is all right," Blackfeather replied. He handed over an envelope containing a simple message: a warning about strangers in the area and advice to be cautious with any unexpected offers. Johnson looked at the envelope, then back at Blackfeather, concern in his eyes. "You think something bad is coming?" "I don't know exactly," Blackfeather said calmly, "but it's better to be prepared than surprised." He watched as Mr. Johnson nodded, understanding the seriousness in Blackfeather's voice. The family quietly prepared themselves for the unexpected, and Blackfeather knew his presence had already made a difference. It was small, but in Broken Bow, small differences mattered. Leaving the Johnsons, Blackfeather mounted his Harley and continued his ride. He followed quiet country roads, weaving through fields of corn and wheat, the engine's steady hum blending with the sounds of nature. Birds chirped in the trees, and the wind rustled through the leaves, but Blackfeather's mind was focused on the task ahead. Every mile brought him closer to the truth, closer to the confrontation he hoped to avoid, but knew might be necessary. Along the way, he checked his notebook, reviewing notes about other families and potential targets. He made mental calculations about the fastest routes, the safest paths, and the places where he could intervene if the strangers tried to move too quickly. He wasn't reckless. Speed was important, but precision was even more crucial. The next stop was the Harper farm, a small homestead on the edge of town. The house was quiet as Blackfeather approached. He left another envelope, similar to the first, with a gentle warning and advice to be cautious. He did not need to explain everything. The message was enough. Families like the Harpers trusted him. They knew that when Blackfeather took action, it was for their protection, and they respected his discretion. By mid-afternoon, Blackfeather had visited several families, each time riding with care and leaving guidance without creating alarm. He could feel the tension in the town rising subtly, though the residents remained unaware of the full danger. Blackfeather's careful movements were like threads being woven into a larger plan, a safety net that would protect the town if the outsiders moved too quickly. After completing his rounds, Blackfeather decided to take a break near a small river outside town. He parked the Harley and sat on a rock by the water, letting the sound of the river calm him. The ride had been long, but necessary. The quiet water reminded him of the balance he needed to maintain: urgency without panic, vigilance without fear. As he sat there, he thought about Tommy. His old friend had once been loyal, brave, and full of life. The betrayal was not just about money or land. It was about trust, friendship, and the choices people made when tempted by opportunity. Blackfeather felt a pang of sadness, but he knew the emotions could not interfere with his mission. He needed clarity, focus, and strategy. He planned his next steps carefully. It was not enough to warn the families. He needed to understand the outsiders' plan, anticipate their moves, and, if necessary, confront Tommy in a way that would force the truth to come out. Blackfeather was not driven by anger alone. He wanted justice, protection, and the chance to give his friend an opportunity to make things right. As evening approached, Blackfeather mounted his Harley once more. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the air was cool against his skin. He rode slowly back toward the center of town, watching as people finished their day's work and children played near their homes. Everything seemed normal, but Blackfeather knew that normalcy could be fragile. One wrong move, one misstep, and the town could be exposed to loss and betrayal. He reached the outskirts of town and stopped at a familiar hill overlooking Broken Bow. From there he could see the main streets, the fields, and the houses he had visited. The town looked peaceful, innocent even. But Blackfeather's sharp eyes noted the small signs of change: a stranger's vehicle parked too long, a window left open in an unusual pattern, a flicker of movement that didn't belong. These details would guide him. Blackfeather spent some time on that hill, planning his night. He knew that the ride he had begun was only the first step. Tomorrow would bring action, decisions, and possibly confrontation. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. The ride through Broken Bow had started as observation and protection, but it was quickly becoming a mission of courage, loyalty, and strategy. As darkness fell, Blackfeather returned to his shop. He parked the Harley inside, cleaned the tools he had used, and reviewed his notes one more time. Everything was in place for the next phase. He knew the outsiders would not act recklessly. They would plan, just as he had. But Blackfeather was ready. Every route, every house, every detail had been considered. He was not rushing into danger blindly. By the time he went to bed that night, Blackfeather was tired but focused. The calm town of Broken Bow slept under the moonlight, unaware of the careful watch that protected them. Tomorrow, the next step of the ride would begin, bringing him closer to the truth, to Tommy, and to the challenge that would define the town's future. The next morning broke with a soft golden light stretching across the fields of Broken Bow. Blackfeather was already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed, thinking. The past few days had been tense, full of observation, planning, and quiet preparation. Now it was time for the next step. He had warned the families, gathered information, and tracked the movements of the outsiders. Today he would confront the situation directly. Blackfeather dressed carefully, putting on his jacket and gloves, and checked his Harley one last time. Every part of the bike was in perfect condition, as if it knew the importance of the ride ahead. He packed a small bag with water, his notebook, and a few tools, enough to handle minor problems, but light enough to keep him fast and mobile. He didn't expect trouble, but he prepared for it. That was how he had always worked. Readiness before reaction. He left his shop quietly, riding toward the outskirts of town, where he had last seen Tommy with the strangers. The early morning air was cool, carrying the faint scent of corn and fresh soil. As he rode, Blackfeather thought about the confrontation ahead. It wasn't just about stopping a plan. It was about loyalty, trust, and choices. Tommy was his friend, but Blackfeather knew that friendship did not excuse betrayal. He needed to face Tommy calmly, using reason and strategy rather than anger. The road led him through empty fields and small hills, familiar paths he had ridden countless times. The quiet made him sharper, more focused. Every sound, the wind through the trees, the distant hum of a tractor, the crunch of gravel under his wheels, was noticeable. Blackfeather relied on small details to guide his judgment, and today, every detail mattered. He approached the farmhouse where Tommy and the outsiders had been meeting. It was a modest building surrounded by open land, with tall trees casting shadows across the yard. Blackfeather slowed his bike, observing from a distance. Tommy was there, talking quietly with the same strangers, gesturing to papers spread across a small table outside. The strangers seemed confident, but Blackfeather could see their hesitation. They didn't know he had been watching. Blackfeather decided to approach slowly, keeping to the shadows. He wanted the first conversation to be about reason, not confrontation. He dismounted his bike and walked calmly toward the farmhouse, keeping his hands visible and his posture relaxed. He knew that anger could escalate situations, but calm confidence could resolve them. "Tommy," Blackfeather called softly as he stepped into the open, his voice firm but not threatening. Tommy looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "Sam, what are you doing here?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but Blackfeather could hear the nervous edge in his voice. "I need to talk," Blackfeather said, keeping his tone steady. "In private." Tommy hesitated, glancing at the strangers who were also watching now. Sure. Just a minute." The strangers moved slightly away, sensing tension, but Blackfeather didn't let them dominate the space. He guided Tommy a few steps aside, enough to speak quietly, but openly. "Tommy," Blackfeather began, "I know what's happening. I know about the land deals and the outsiders. I don't understand why you're involved." Tommy's face shifted through a mix of guilt, fear, and defiance.
"Sam, it's not what you think. Stop," Blackfeather interrupted gently but firmly.
"I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make sure people don't get hurt. This town, the families, they're trusting us. And you're risking everything." Tommy looked away, struggling to find words. He had once been proud, brave, and loyal, but the temptation of quick gain had clouded his judgment. Blackfeather could see the conflict in him, the part of Tommy that still remembered friendship, honor, and trust. I didn't think it would go this far," Tommy admitted quietly. "I thought I could manage it, but—" His voice trailed off heavy with regret. Blackfeather nodded, acknowledging the truth in Tommy's words. "It's not too late to fix it," he said calmly. "Return what belongs to the families. Stop the outsiders. Make things right. That's the choice you have." Tommy swallowed hard, glancing at the strangers. They were still there, watching, unsure of how to act. Blackfeather had the advantage, not because of force, but because of clarity. He was calm, prepared, and principled. Tommy and the strangers realized that whatever happened next, they were dealing with someone who would not back down or be deceived. The strangers shifted uneasily. Blackfeather walked a few steps closer, keeping his tone steady. "You need to leave them alone. This town isn't yours to take. You want business? Go elsewhere. You want profit? Find a place that doesn't hurt innocent people." One of the strangers opened his mouth, but Blackfeather's calm confidence made him hesitate. Words could escalate, but Blackfeather relied on reasoning. "I'm giving you a choice," he said. "Leave quietly. Walk away. Or you deal with consequences. The families, the town, the law. It's not worth risk for a few dollars." The strangers glanced at Tommy, realizing their plan had lost momentum. They exchanged murmured words, then slowly began to pack up, acknowledging that this situation was not worth the trouble. Tommy watched, torn between fear, relief, and shame. Blackfeather turned back to Tommy. "You have a chance to make this right," he said. "Do the right thing. For yourself, for me, and for the town." Tommy looked down at his hands, then back at Blackfeather. The weight of responsibility had settled on him. "Okay," he said finally, voice quiet but firm. I'll fix it. I'll return the money and stop the plans." Blackfeather nodded, satisfied with the decision. "Good. That's all I ask." The strangers left without further incident, and Blackfeather watched them go, making sure they did not return. Then he and Tommy walked back toward the farmhouse, speaking quietly about the steps Tommy would take to correct his mistakes. It was a long conversation, but one that needed honesty and clarity. Blackfeather guided him through the process, ensuring that the families would be protected and that the town would remain safe. By late afternoon, the confrontation was over. Blackfeather had not needed force, threats, or anger. He had relied on calm reasoning and careful observation. Tommy had made the right choice, and the outsiders had left Broken Bow. The town remained untouched by the scheme, and families could continue their lives without fear. As the sun began to set, Blackfeather rode slowly back toward the center of town, the engine of his Harley humming quietly. The streets were peaceful again, filled with the warm glow of evening light. Broken Bow seemed ordinary once more, but Blackfeather knew that the events of the day had changed everything. Trust had been tested, choices had been made, and loyalty had been reaffirmed. He stopped at the diner for a brief moment, sipping coffee and watching the townspeople. They had no idea how close they had come to loss, but Blackfeather didn't need to explain. His actions had spoken louder than words. Protection, courage, and vigilance were sometimes quiet, almost invisible, but they made all the difference. That night, Blackfeather returned to his shop, tired but content. He cleaned his tools, checked his bike, and reviewed his notes one last time. The town was safe, the betrayal had been addressed, and his friend had been given the chance to make things right. Blackfeather knew the journey was not over. He would always watch over Broken Bow, but tonight he allowed himself a quiet moment of relief. He looked out at the fields bathed in moonlight, listening to the wind rustling through the corn. The town slept peacefully, and for once, it could do so without fear. Blackfeather knew he had done the right thing, not with anger or violence, but with patience, careful planning, and unwavering focus. Broken Bow remained calm, and its people safe. And somewhere in the night, Blackfeather felt a quiet pride. He had faced betrayal, guided his friend to the right path, and protected the town he loved. The road ahead would always have challenges, but for now, Broken Bow could breathe easy. The ride of vigilance and courage had reached a turning point, and Blackfeather had proven that trust, loyalty, and careful action could overcome even the deepest betrayal. The morning after the confrontation, Broken Bow seemed to breathe again. The streets were quiet, the fields shimmered with dew, and the air carried the familiar sense of earth and livestock. For most of the town, life went on as usual, unaware of how close they had come to being hurt, but Blackfeather was awake before the sun had fully risen, sitting in his shop with a cup of strong coffee, thinking about the day ahead. Tommy had promised to correct his mistakes, but promises alone were not enough. Blackfeather needed to make sure the families were fully protected and that the outsiders had no way to return. The lesson of the past days was clear. Vigilance was as important as courage. Blackfeather had spent his life learning to anticipate danger, to watch carefully, and to act decisively. Today would be the day to solidify the protection he had started. He began by making a list of every family that had been at risk and reviewing the notes he had gathered over the past days. The Johnsons, the Harpers, the Millers, and others all had received his quiet warnings. Blackfeather planned to visit them one last time, ensuring they were prepared and reassured. He also planned to meet Tommy, helping him take the steps necessary to restore trust. Blackfeather mounted his Harley, the engine humming steadily under him. The ride through Broken Bow's quiet streets gave him a sense of purpose. Each mile reminded him why he had chosen to act. Protecting the town was not about glory or recognition. It was about doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. His first stop was the Johnson farm. The family was already busy in the fields, and they waved as Blackfeather approached. "Morning, Sam, Mr. Pye," Johnson said, smiling despite the early hour. "Morning," Blackfeather replied. "I just wanted to check in. Is everything ready?" "Yes," Mr. Johnson said. "We've kept watch, and everything seems fine. Your warnings helped us prepare. We appreciate it." Blackfeather nodded. "Good. Stay alert, but don't worry too much. Everything will be all right." He left them with a calm assurance, then rode to the next farm, the Harpers. The process was the same: a brief visit, a few words of guidance, and a simple reassurance. Each family appreciated his presence, but none asked too many questions. Blackfeather had learned long ago that sometimes the best protection was quiet action, not explanation. By mid-morning, Blackfeather returned to the farmhouse where Tommy had been. The sun was higher now, shining across the fields and highlighting the dust that rose from the dirt roads. Tommy was waiting, looking tense but determined. He had spent the morning preparing, contacting the families he had wronged and beginning the process of returning money or reversing agreements. Blackfeather watched him for a moment. "You've started well," he said simply. Tommy nodded. "I know it won't erase everything, but I want to make it right. I don't want to lose the town or our friendship because of my mistakes." "That's the right choice," Blackfeather replied. "It won't be easy, and some people might be upset at first, but honesty and action can rebuild trust." They spent the rest of the morning together, walking through the farmhouse, making phone calls, and ensuring that the families had clear guidance on what to do if the outsiders tried to return. Blackfeather offered advice, using his calm and methodical approach to help Tommy plan each step. It was a careful process, emphasizing communication, responsibility, and accountability. By afternoon, the work at the farmhouse was complete. Tommy had made calls, sent messages, and even met a few families in person, explaining the situation and promising to make amends. The outsiders had been observed leaving the area quietly, ensuring they would not return. Blackfeather had ensured that the town was safe, but more importantly, he had given Tommy a chance to choose the right path. Blackfeather and Tommy sat on the porch of the farmhouse, looking out across the fields. The silence was comfortable, filled with reflection rather than tension. Blackfeather broke it first. "You know, trust can be rebuilt," he said. "It takes time, patience, and consistent action. You've made the first step. Now, it's about continuing to do the right things." Tommy nodded slowly. "I understand. I've learned more in these past days than I thought I would. I'll do everything I can to make this right." Blackfeather smiled faintly. "That's all anyone can ask. Courage isn't just in facing danger. It's in admitting mistakes and taking responsibility." As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow across Broken Bow, Blackfeather prepared to leave. He had completed his mission, ensured the town's safety, and guided his friend toward redemption. The Harley roared softly as he mounted it, the familiar hum giving him a sense of satisfaction. He rode slowly through the streets of Broken Bow one last time that evening, observing the town he had protected. Children played quietly in the yards, Neighbors waved at each other, and the fields swayed gently in the wind. Life seemed normal, peaceful, and safe. But Blackfeather knew that vigilance was always necessary. Even in quiet towns, decisions could change the course of events. He stopped briefly at the diner, sipping coffee and watching the townspeople. None of them knew how close they had come to danger, but Blackfeather didn't need recognition. He didn't act for praise. He acted because it was the right thing to do. Quiet protection, careful planning, and courage were often invisible, but they were powerful. That night, as he returned to his shop, Blackfeather reflected on the past days. The ride through Broken Bow had been challenging, but it had tested him in ways he had not expected. He had faced betrayal, guided a friend toward the right path, and ensured the safety of the town. And in the process, he had strengthened his own sense of purpose and resolve. He parked the Harley, cleaned his tools, and reviewed his notes one final time. Every observation, every warning, every conversation had been carefully documented. Broken Bow was safe, and the townspeople could continue their lives without fear. Blackfeather felt a quiet pride, knowing that he had done his part. As he looked out over the fields under the soft glow of moonlight, Blackfeather allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He thought about the families, the choices, and the importance of trust. Broken Bow had survived the test not because of luck, but because of careful preparation, courage, and the willingness of one man to act with integrity. Tommy had begun to repair his mistakes, and in time, he would regain the trust he had lost. The outsiders were gone, their influence removed from the town, and Blackfeather, ever vigilant, knew that life would return to its quiet rhythm, but that he would always be ready if danger returned. He took a final ride through the empty streets, the wind carrying the faint sounds of the town settling into the night. The Harley's engine hummed like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. Broken Bow slept peacefully, its people unaware of the careful watch keeping them safe. And in that quiet, Blackfeather found satisfaction. Courage, loyalty, and careful action had triumphed over betrayal and risk. By the time he returned to his shop and parked the bike for the night, the town was calm, safe, and whole. Blackfeather knew that the road ahead would always have challenges, but for now, the journey had a clear ending. Broken Bow was protected, and the bonds of friendship and trust had been tested and strengthened. As he finally settled into bed, the events of the past days weighed lightly on him. The ride of vigilance, courage, and careful observation had come to an end, and the town had survived. Blackfeather closed his eyes, knowing that he had made a difference. The betrayal had been faced, justice had been guided, and Broken Bow could continue its peaceful life thanks to quiet courage and unwavering focus. Tomorrow would bring a new day, as it always did, and Blackfeather would rise again, ready to protect, guide, and stand watch over the town he loved. But tonight, for the first time in several tense days, he allowed himself to rest. Broken Bow, Nebraska, slept under the stars, peaceful and safe. And somewhere in the quiet night, Blackfeather knew that trust, loyalty, and integrity had triumphed.